All right, council, let's call to order the public hearing of objections to bylaw 22-07, a bylaw relating to the Town of St. Andrews Council remuneration here on Monday, December 12th, 6:30 p.m. We are in the council chambers at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex. This is also going to be aired via Zoom and Facebook. If anyone has any objections, there's still time to get it in, or at least council will certainly have a chance to read it before in the future, but the email is pnopper@townofstandrews.ca. We'll get into the recording of attendance. I note that all members of council are in attendance. And before we get into the agenda, I wanted to recognize that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Beskotu-Magadi people. So for the agenda, could I have a mover to accept the agenda? It is just the, there'll be a presentation, but it is just the hearing of objections. I've got Councillor Heenan and seconded by Deputy Mayor Akaji. Any changes to the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Disclosure of conflict of interest. Would anyone like to declare one for this first meeting? Seeing none. So we're going to jump right into presentations.
Sorry, Your Worship, did you actually call all in favor?
Oh, I didn't call it, did I? All in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye, that's everybody. Thank you. And now we're moving into presentations. We will have our CAO, Chris Spear, just do a little bit of a secondary background to council on this as we continue to educate the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll just let Mr. Knopper get set up here with the PowerPoint. Excuse my back as I turn back and forth to it. Dark backgrounds, courtesy of everyone that's doing this virtually, put a little harder. The last one was a little harder to see. So council, and for any of you that watched the last presentation 3 weeks ago, this is kind of a rehash of it, just for everyone's sake that may have missed that at that point of time. So we're talking about it's officially called the Remuneration of Council bylaw. It's 1802, and this is what the hearing of objections about. And I just want to go through some of the facts as I guess I perceive them as I presented. So adequate compensation through various studies is important. It's to attract quality candidates that in this day and age when there is lots of volunteers needed and lots of organizations that can attract people. People have choices what they can do. And well, council's a good service, so is everything from Kiwanis, Lions Club, coaching, whatever. And so it's just something that can help attract the candidates that are needed in such a complex environment. As discussed before, council, as we all know, and especially with local government reform, is becoming a higher stress, many hours position. The town council meets a minimum of 6 hours formally. Then if you throw on top additional meetings and stuff, you're running 6 hours, per month. But an additional meetings and committees and things, you could easily double that. Then plus prep time is usually 2 to 3 hours per meeting. And then part of it, something that's interesting that has come out is that having higher rates is actually allows to be more inclusive for those that are economically disadvantaged. And that if there's people that are at the lower end of the income scale, they may have to make a choice between volunteering and giving up night shifts or a second job. And so this type of restructuring would allow those individuals to also participate in the local government process. Next slide, please. So local government reform is happening and a new organization is forming as of January 1st, still called the Town of St. Andrews. We'll be welcoming new 3 councillors and we'll actually be swearing them in this Thursday night, 6:30, for those that would like to come to it. Many communities struggle with acclimation. For the Town of St. Andrews, we did have the bare minimum to have a competitive by-elections this past. We had a healthy election for this current council where we had, I think, 16 or 17 candidates for the positions. But prior to that, that council was fully acclaimed. So it comes in waves and bounces, and this may help this. And then, like we said, the complexity of planning is just increasing as time goes on. Add in climate change, the struggles with funding. Councils are juggling many priorities and staff are trying to give them options with all of them, but ultimately you have to make the decisions based on information that we provide. What it should be noted is that there's I think 58 new entities built. Out of that, only 6 of us went to by-elections like St. Andrews. For every other area, the facilitator, with the help of a transition team, came up with what proper compensation was. In St. Andrews, and the other areas, Oromocto being one, I forget the other 4, but the council of the day had to come up with the new compensation if moving forward, if they so choose. Oh, thank you. So under current compensation, and I should say that for the St. Andrews column, that's what they're making right now. For the other municipalities, that's what's going to be within their earnings after January. So with the mayor currently around 13,000, the deputy mayor around 88, and the councilors around 75. In Eastern Charlotte, the mayor will be making 33, the deputy mayor 22. And instead of reading all these columns, I'll just say it goes from 37 to about 38. The deputies mayor making between 16 and 22, and councilors making as high as 21 and $13,000. So I believe I saw that actually in Ontario, they have a formal mechanism in place to compensate council compensation, I believe, at least for anything that's not Toronto. And that would be the best thing, to be perfectly honest, but it's not here. It's always been left up to councilors, and even in the newest local governance reform, it's still being left up to the local councils to ultimately decide what they want to do. And so in the past, we've compared it to similar municipalities, number of meetings, what we've had for assets, things like that, just to try to find some type of number that the populace and the councils could live with. So earlier this year, the Association of Francophone Municipalities published a guide entitled Elected Officials Compensation. It was the first attempt, I guess, or at least a formal procedure to try to come up with various forms of compensation. It involved population, services provided to the public, number of institutions, which includes schools, stuff like that, average tax base, and then the size of the territory. Based on the raises we're seeing in the compensation across other municipalities, it looks like many of them were also going that way. So using the AFNB guide, it can be downloaded. Here are the various points. Things I want to talk about briefly is that, they talk about population, and population isn't necessarily a good indicator of the complexity of an organization. For St. Andrews, out of the 66 entities that are listed with compensation and the assessments, we're in the top third. That's excluding the cities. But even though we may be a smaller population, we have an assessment that's significantly higher. And so, for instance, we're only about 15% below St. Stephen's, the new rural municipality of municipal district of St. Stephen, that it's called, population. But the 20% in the assessment, even though their population is probably triple ours now, I think they're close to 10,000 people. We have significant institutions in a town our size, with not only the 3 schools, but we also have the Biological Center and the Huntsman Marine Science Center. And again, there was an email that had come in about a project they're doing down there that requires us to address some things in engineering and things. So there's a complexity when you have these types of institutions that adds more to the complexity of council's decision making. The assessment per tax base, there was 3 different levels that goes with there, and St. Andrews was about double the highest level. So we're very, very lucky. But it's again, it's a complexity, because as you have more tax dollars available, people are looking for more services to be provided. And I guess the one thing is the size of our territory is still relatively small in comparison to with many others. But again, with the Department of Transportation, for instance, still maintaining the roads and things, even some of these really large territories, the current municipal entities will still be the focus for councils for a few years. So the provincial averages, taking the cities out of the equation across New Brunswick, is the mayors are making 34,000, the deputy mayor is about 17, and the councillor is about 13,800. And so the recommended wages based on the AFNB simply is that the mayors could be between 34,000 and 42,650, the deputy mayor between 14 and 20,000, and the councillors between $13,000 and $18,000. So in the draft version of the bylaw, for rating one only, councils or staff brought forward the minimum of the range, which has been worked into the provincial budget already at a cost of about $153,000 for all 9 councillors and the mayor. So the updated compensation still puts the town of St. Andrews and their council at the lower end, or at least the equivalent of the lower end, still putting in a lot of time. And, compared to the local municipalities that, may not have the same services as us, the same assets, about the same level. So on, staff introduced the bylaw for review, and that was November 22nd, I think. I had it typed down and forgot to read it. And of course, tonight we have the meeting of objections. And then there is consideration for second and third reading in your agenda tonight that council can do with what you'd like to do with that. Well, I guess that's it. So I guess your worship, where it's a meeting of objections, it's not really appropriate for me to take questions at this time, I don't think.
No, I think that's fine, and council's already seen that, so they've already had the opportunity to ask questions. So thank you on that. So we are going to move to the hearing of objections at this point, but before we did, I just wanted council to know this is in the next meeting package, but when I look at those values, and I know it's when it comes to mayor, I actually think that value is a little high. I actually think that the mayor's salary could be lowered, and I've said it before, I don't actually do this for money, so I do it for the love of the community, but in the same sense, we all do appreciate compensation. And as we saw from that presentation, there's certainly some inconsistencies, but I'll be proposing in the next meeting to actually reduce my particular salary by 20 to 25%. And I'd also like your consideration that extra funds, because through a moderator that has been that has been proposed to local government for our budget, since that money has been budgeted by our facilitator, I'd actually propose that those funds get switched over to the firefighters to increase their stipend for this year, as I signed their checks most recently, and the amount of hours they put in versus compensation. I know it's a volunteer fire department, but it would be a great initiative to show that we appreciate them, especially with the danger that they take. So I just wanted to make council aware of that for the next meeting. So let's move into the hearing of objections. So this is a bylaw number 22-07, a bylaw relating to the town of St. Andrews Council remuneration, FA 221115, that the council of the town of St. Andrews is holding a public meeting to hear objections to bylaw number 22-07, a bylaw relating to the town of St. Andrews Council remuneration. So, all right, so at this point, we will open it up to the floor. I understand that we've only had one letter in to date, which has been cascaded to council.
Correct, your worship.
And so that has been submitted, and all of you have received it. So at this particular point, we will take it from the floor. We just ask that any speaker say their name, their address, but also that they do limit their comments to 10 minutes, as we do have another agenda after this as well. So at this particular point, I see that someone's at the podium. So if you'd like to state your name, your address, and go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Guy Gruen. I'm at 50 Ernest Street. I'd just like to add a few items for council's consideration on this bylaw. As Mr. Spear pointed out, and at the 21st of November meeting, the CAO identified the need to attract quality candidates and problems with acclamations as justification for a remuneration review. But the results of the last election and the recent by-election indicate that St. Andrews has an abundance of high-quality candidates willing to stand for office, signaling that we may not have that kind of a problem in this area. In addition, council was fully aware of the salary scale when they ran for office and knew that this remuneration was based on reflected the fact that this was a part-time job. It does not seem fair to the taxpayer, and especially the new residents from Chamcook and Bayside, to have a significant pay increase when the job description has not changed. And the addition of 3 new councillors should in fact lighten the workload for councillors. Council remuneration has always been a sensitive subject for both council and the public. It is therefore important that this process be done in as transparent and a fair manner as possible, and that the process be consistent with neighboring municipalities. So let's do a comparison of the neighboring communities. St. Andrews has a population of 2,686 and is primarily a seasonal tourism resort with an influx of tourists from May to September. St. Andrews is a destination resort, and visitors are generally people visiting the town for recreational purposes. St. Stephen has a population of 8,119 and is a regional hub with 3 international border crossings, a major highway, regional recreation facility, shopping center, large building supply outlets, car dealerships, a regional hospital, numerous gas stations, multiple fire stations, Service Canada and Service NB New Brunswick locations, land registry offices for the province of New Brunswick, and many other amenities that are consistent with a regional hub. St. Stephen has an influx of hundreds, if not thousands, of people each day, either crossing the border, shopping in town, seeking medical attention, or obtaining government services. Eastern Charlotte has a population of 6,674, and like St. Stephen, is a small regional hub with a major highway, a ferry crossing to Grand Manan, large building supply outlets, multiple recreation facilities, numerous gas stations, salmon aquaculture industry, multiple government departments, the regional RCMP detachment headquarters, Service New Brunswick, multiple fire stations, multiple sewage and water treatment plants, and many other amenities that are consistent with a regional hub. Eastern Charlotte also has an influx of hundreds of people each day seeking police services, banking, gas, shopping in town, obtaining government services, or transiting through town on the highway and the ferry to Grand Manan. Eastern Charlotte is also a major staging area in the event of an incident at Point Lepreau facility. The larger residential populations and thousands of visitors present in St. Stephen and Eastern Charlotte on a continuous basis significantly adds to the complexities of managing these regional hub towns, requiring a greater level of emergency preparedness, increased infrastructure requirements, more citizen interaction, and higher levels of risk. In contrast, St. Andrews is relatively dormant for a significant portion of the year, with few outside visitors and many residents that leave town during the winter months, which means the level of complexity is not the same. As part of the municipal reform initiative, excuse me, the salary of the mayor of St. Stephen was increased to $37,000, and the mayor of Eastern Charlotte's salary was increased to $33,000. The salary for the mayor of St. Andrews was left at $13,525 and was not changed by the province. One important metric in comparing salaries for different sized communities is the salary per person, or the cost per taxpayer. If you look at St. Stephen, the mayor's salary of $37,000 works out to $4.56 per person. Eastern Charlotte's mayor's salary of $33,000 is $4.94 per person. And St. Andrew's current mayor's salary of $13,525 equals $5.04 per person, which is more than St. Stephen and Eastern Charlotte on a per taxpayer basis. The proposed increase of the mayor's salary to $34,000 would equal a cost of $12.66 per person which is almost 3 times that of St. Stephen and Eastern Charlotte on a per-person basis. This may explain why the province elected not to change the salary base for the town of St. Andrews. The Local Governance Act, Section 96, states that it is prohibited conflict for council to use their position for personal gain. And clearly, a significant pay increase would be a personal gain. To overcome this, the tradition of councils in the past has been to delay remuneration changes so that they apply to the new incoming council to avoid an obvious conflict of interest caused by council voting themselves a pay increase. It is also important to keep in mind that Town of St. Andrews Council salaries rise each year by the Consumer Price Index, which amounts to 6.3% increase this year. And that councillors have access to taxpayer-funded daycare services, benefits that are not available to most taxpayers. Therefore, out of fairness to the taxpayers of St. Andrews, and for the reasons cited above, I'm opposed to a 254% increase in the mayor's salary, a 66% increase in the deputy mayor's salary, and a 74% increase in councillor's salary, especially when many in our community are struggling with the effects of high inflation, increased interest rates, high fuel prices, and spiraling food costs. My recommendation is that council appoint an independent committee with no ties to council or staff to hold public meetings on council remuneration. The committee can gather input from the public to prepare and present a recommendation to council to adjust the remuneration of the next council. This would avoid the obvious prohibited conflict under the Local Governance Act that voting on an increase in personal compensation would cause, and diffuse any concerns of the public over this issue, especially with new residents just joining our community. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak that's here? Okay, and just the one online, correct? Is there anyone online that Mr. Knopper? Okay, so at this particular time at 6:52 PM, I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn. That Deputy Mayor Akji and seconded by Councillor Blanchard. All in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. We are adjourned.